Tyrese Langston didn't ask to be a symbol. He just wanted to do math in peace. But when three boys cornered him behind the playground, it became clear that excellence made him a target. He was smart, quiet, and black, and that was enough to trigger something ugly. What they didn't see coming was the one thing they never expected, that Tyrese wasn't alone, and this time the story wouldn't be buried. Not again. Just before we begin, do you usually catch these stories late at night or while you're taking a break during the day? Let me know down below. What you're about to hear is one of those stories that starts small, then shakes everything. Make sure to hit subscribe so you're here for the next one too. Tyrese Langston's pencil moved swiftly across his math worksheet. The other 7th graders were still working, but he'd finished 10 minutes early. Again. Show your work next time, Tyrese, Mrs. Peterson said, eyeing his perfect answers suspiciously as she passed. Tyrese nodded politely, though his stomach tightened. He'd done all the calculations in his head, just like Grandpa Solomon had taught him. Being the new kid was hard enough. Being the only black kid in advanced math made him stand out even more. 3 weeks at Westridge Middle School had taught Tyrese the rules. Keep your head down. Don't raise your hand too often. Try to blend in. It wasn't working. Hey, genius, Connor Reynolds whispered from behind. Stop making us look bad. Tyrese stared straight ahead, feeling Connor's breath on his neck. Connor's father was on the school board. Everyone knew that. His friends Ryan and Jason snickered nearby. Later that day, Tyrese sat alone at lunch, pulling out his journal. Day 15 at Westridge, he wrote. Still no friends. Math competition tomorrow. The leather-bound journal was Grandpa Solomon's gift. Record history as it happens, his grandfather had told him. Your history matters. At home that evening, Tyrese practiced math problems while his grandfather chopped vegetables for dinner. How's the new school treating you? Grandpa Solomon asked, his hands steady despite his 72 years. Fine, Tyrese lied, solving another equation. Solomon's eyes, wise behind his glasses, lingered on his grandson. You know, when I was marching in Selma. Grandpa, that was different, Tyrese interrupted. Times have changed. Solomon set down his knife. Some things change. Some don't. He tapped Tyrese's journal. That's why we keep records. The next day, Tyrese's heart raced as the math competition scores appeared on the board. First place, Tyrese Langston. This is rigged, Connor muttered loudly. No way he beat me. Walking home, Tyrese felt someone following. He turned to find Connor, Ryan, and Jason trailing him. Hey, math whiz, Connor called. We need to talk about you embarrassing everyone today. Tyrese walked faster, cutting behind the playground. Bad move. It was deserted, with tall fences blocking the view from the street. You think you're special? Connor's hand shot out, grabbing Tyrese's shirt. The other boys surrounded him. Ryan, taller than the others, leaned in. What you gonna do now, little man? Tyrese's heart hammered as Jason pressed closer. Maybe he thinks he's better than us. Through fear-narrowed vision, Tyrese noticed something Connor and his friends didn't. Ms. Winters, the young English teacher, had stepped around the corner. She froze, seeing the confrontation. Would she help? Would anyone? What happened next would change everything at Westridge Middle School, but not in the way anyone expected. Ms. Winters took a step forward, hesitated, then retreated around the corner. Tyrese's heart sank. Even teachers were afraid of Connor. I asked you a question. Ryan yanked Tyrese's collar harder. What you gonna do? Run to the principal. The boys laughed. Tyrese's mind raced. Grandpa Solomon's voice echoed in his head. Your greatest weapon is right here, he'd say, tapping Tyrese's temple. Use it. I'm not running anywhere, Tyrese said calmly. His voice came out steadier than he expected. But I am wondering why you're so threatened by me. Connor blinked, caught off guard. What? I'm just curious why my test score bothers you so much, Tyrese continued. Does your dad expect perfect grades? Connor's face flushed. Shut up about my dad. Unknown to them all, Zoe Chen crouched behind the playground equipment, her phone recording everything. She'd been documenting bullying incidents all year, though she'd never shown anyone the footage. You don't belong here, Jason spat, pushing Tyrese's shoulder. Go back to whatever school you came from. My grandfather says people who need to push others down are usually falling themselves, Tyrese said, meeting Jason's eyes. Connor pulled back his fist. Your grandfather should shut his. What's going on here? Principal Winters appeared, with Ms. Winters trailing behind him, looking guilty. Connor immediately released Tyrese's shirt. Just talking, sir, Connor said, suddenly respectful. The principal looked between them. Tyrese? Is that right? Every instinct told Tyrese to agree, to avoid making waves. Instead, he straightened his rumpled shirt. No, sir. They cornered me because they're upset about the math competition. Principal Winters sighed like this was a minor annoyance. Boys, let's remember sportsmanship. Connor, you and your friends head home now. That was it. No consequences. Tyrese, you should be more careful about competitive behavior, the principal added. We're a team here at Westridge. Tyrese felt heat rise in his face. He was being blamed. At home, Tyrese finally broke down, telling his grandfather everything. Solomon's face hardened as he listened. I've seen this before, he said finally. They want you to shrink yourself, to be less so they can feel more. What should I do? Tyrese asked, wiping angry tears. Solomon stood, retrieving an old photo album. First, we remember we're not alone. He opened to pictures of himself as a young man at civil rights marches. Then, we get strategic. That night, Tyrese's phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. It was a video of the confrontation, filmed from behind the playground equipment. The message read, You're not alone. I have more. Zoe, Tyrese stared at the screen, heart pounding. He wasn't powerless after all. Across town, Ms. Winters sat at her kitchen table, facing her father, the principal. Dad, what happened today was wrong, she said, her voice shaking. Those boys were threatening him. Principal Winters frowned. Elaine, you're new to teaching. Don't create problems where there aren't any. But there was a problem. And it was about to blow wide open. The next morning, Tyrese and Grandpa Solomon sat at their kitchen table with a plan. Remember, this isn't just about stopping 3 bullies, Solomon said. It's about changing the system that protects them. Tyrese nodded, reviewing the notes they'd made. Document everything. Build alliances. Know your rights. At school, Zoe Chen waited by Tyrese's locker, nervously clutching her backpack. Petite with determined eyes behind round glasses, she'd been practically invisible until now. I have a whole folder, she whispered, glancing around. 2 years of incidents. Connor's group always gets away with it. Why help me? Tyrese asked. Zoe pushed up her sleeve, revealing a faded scar. Last year, Ryan accidentally pushed me into a doorframe. Principal Winters called it horseplay. They agreed to meet after school at the library. As Tyrese turned to leave, Ms. Winters approached. Tyrese, can I speak with you? Her classroom was empty. Ms. Winters closed the door. I'm sorry, she said, her voice quivering. I should have stepped in immediately yesterday. Why didn't you? Tyrese asked. I'm afraid, she admitted. Principal Winters is my father. But that's no excuse. Tyrese studied her. We're meeting at the library after school. We could use a teacher's help. Meanwhile, Connor and his friends weren't finished. During lunch, they knocked Tyrese's tray to the floor. Oops, Connor smirked. Butterfingers. Instead of staying silent, Tyrese spoke clearly. That's the 3rd documented incident this week, Connor. Connor's smirk faltered. What? I'm keeping records now, Tyrese said, maintaining eye contact. And I'm not the only one. That afternoon, the Unlikely Alliance gathered. Tyrese, Zoe, Ms. Winters, and 2 other students who'd been watching from a distance. My grandfather's coming to the school board meeting next week, Tyrese explained. But first, we need to follow the official complaint process. Ms. Winters looked nervous but resolute. I'll help file the teacher witness report. As they planned, Tyrese's phone buzzed with a text from his grandfather. Just discovered Connor's father blocked the district's anti-bullying initiative last year. We're dealing with more than just mean kids. The next day, Tyrese and Zoe submitted formal complaints. Principal Winters called them to his office. I understand you filed some paperwork, he said, his smile tight. But there's no need for such formality. Boys will be boys. With respect, sir, Tyrese replied. The district policy requires you to investigate all documented allegations. The principal's smile vanished. I decide what happens at my school. Actually, Ms. Winters said, entering with a folder, district policy is quite clear. She handed her father the regulations. Principal Winters' face darkened. Elaine, we'll discuss this at home. No, Dad, she replied calmly. We'll discuss it through proper channels. As they left the office, Connor waited outside with his friends. But instead of threatening Tyrese, he looked worried. My dad wants to talk to your grandfather, he said, his voice less confident than usual. He's really mad. Good, Tyrese replied, standing taller. It's about time someone was. The atmosphere at Westridge grew tense. Students whispered as Tyrese passed in the hallways. Some avoided him. Others nodded in quiet support. They're calling you a troublemaker, Zoe reported during lunch. Their table had grown to include Malik and Ava, two students who'd faced similar treatment. My mom says we're doing the right thing, Ava said softly. Her family had moved from El Salvador 3 years ago. She's coming to the board meeting, too. Tyrese's phone lit up with a text from Grandpa Solomon. Board member Reynolds called. Tried to intimidate me. Said we're making mountains out of molehills. I told him to prepare for an avalanche. After school, Connor and his friends had grown more calculating. They no longer confronted Tyrese directly. Instead, they worked to turn others against him. He's trying to get the school in trouble, Connor told a group of students. If he doesn't like it here, he should just leave. That evening, Ms. Winters visited Tyrese's home to meet with him and his grandfather. Her hands trembled as she handed them a stack of papers. These are incident reports I should have filed over the past year, she admitted. I was afraid of disappointing my father. Solomon studied her with kind eyes. Standing up to family is sometimes the hardest thing we do. There's something else, Ms. Winters said. Connor's father doesn't just sit on the school board. He blocked 3 diversity initiatives last year and cut funding for anti-bullying programs. So the fish stinks from the head, Solomon mused. The school board meeting approached quickly. 2 days before, Tyrese found his locker vandalized. Someone had scratched snitch across the door. Principal Winters' response: students must respect school property. We'll investigate. That same day, Ryan approached Tyrese alone in the hallway. Tyrese tensed, preparing for trouble. My little brother Jamie told me what we did was wrong, Ryan said, looking uncomfortable. He asked why I was being mean to you. What did you tell him? Tyrese asked. Ryan shrugged. I don't know anymore. The night before the board meeting, Solomon helped Tyrese prepare his statement. Remember, speak truth to power, Solomon advised. But never forget, the goal isn't revenge. It's justice and change. Meanwhile, Ms. Winters received a disturbing call from her father. Elaine, this has gone too far, Principal Winters said. That boy is manipulating you. Your career is just starting. Don't throw it away. That boy has a name, she replied. And he has rights. The Reynolds family has influence beyond this school, her father warned. Don't make enemies you can't afford. Ms. Winters' voice strengthened. I already made an enemy I couldn't afford, Dad. My own conscience. The morning of the board meeting, Tyrese discovered something unexpected on social media. A student-created group called Stand with Tyrese had gathered over 50 members overnight. As Tyrese and his grandfather drove to the meeting, Solomon squeezed his grandson's shoulder. Whatever happens tonight, I'm proud of you. Tyrese nodded, his speech folded carefully in his pocket. But neither of them could predict the shocking events about to unfold in that crowded boardroom. The school board meeting room buzzed with unexpected energy. Normally attended by just a handful of parents, tonight every seat was filled. Tyrese recognized faces from school, students, parents, even teachers, sitting alongside community members he'd never seen before. Board member James Reynolds, Connor's father, tapped his microphone impatiently. Let's begin with the standard agenda items, he announced, ignoring the crowd. Principal Winters sat nearby, his face stony. Connor and his friends huddled in back row seats, looking uncomfortable in their pressed shirts, clearly brought by parents who wanted them to make good impressions. During public comments, Solomon Langston approached the microphone. Standing tall despite his 72 years, he addressed the board with dignified precision. My grandson transferred to Westridge seeking quality education, he began. Instead, he found systematic harassment that school leadership has repeatedly ignored. Reynolds interrupted. We have procedures for student conflicts, Mr. Langston. This meeting isn't the appropriate forum. With respect, Solomon continued firmly, when procedures fail, public accountability becomes necessary. As Solomon detailed the incidents, Reynolds' face darkened. When Solomon mentioned the connection between Reynolds blocking anti-bullying initiatives and his own son's behavior, Reynolds exploded. How dare you, he snapped. This is nothing but a troubled student seeking attention. In my day, kids handled their own problems without crying racism every 5 minutes. A collective gasp filled the room. Even board members looked shocked at Reynolds' outburst. What no one anticipated was what happened next. A large screen at the front of the room suddenly flickered to life. Someone had hacked into the presentation system. The video showed Connor grabbing Tyrese's shirt. What you gonna do, little man? The footage continued, clearly showing the racially charged intimidation. Principal Winters jumped up. This is unauthorized. Turn it off immediately. But more videos played. Other incidents involving Connor's group targeting various students. Testimonials appeared on screen from kids who transferred schools after being bullied. The final slide simply read, 2 years of documented incidents. 0 consequences. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Parents demanded answers. Reynolds pounded his gavel, but the damage was done. Afterward, in the hallway, Tyrese found a tearful Ms. Winters. I didn't leak those videos, she whispered. I know, Tyrese said. It was Zoe. She warned me this morning. The next day, chaos ensued. Local news vans parked outside Westridge. Online communities erupted with the story, prestigious school covers up bullying scandal. Principal Winters called Tyrese and his grandfather to his office, where a school district lawyer waited. We're prepared to offer a generous accommodation, the lawyer began smoothly. The incidents were regrettable, but we can transfer those students to different classes, provide counseling, and implement sensitivity training. He slid forward a document. In exchange, we ask you to sign this non-disclosure agreement and remove all videos from circulation. Solomon didn't touch the paper. So your solution is to silence the victims? Tyrese left school that day to find his journal missing from his locker. That night, photos of his private writings appeared on social media with mocking comments. The next morning, Tyrese opened his locker to find a crude racial slur scrawled inside. For the first time since everything began, he wondered if the fight was worth it. Maybe we should consider another school, Tyrese told his grandfather that evening, his voice hollow. Solomon studied his grandson's tired eyes. Is that what you really want? Before Tyrese could answer, his phone buzzed with an anonymous message. Not everyone is against you. Meet at the library tomorrow. Things are about to change. The hallways fell silent as Tyrese walked to class the next day. Some students whispered behind their hands. Others looked away. The stolen journal pages had exposed his private thoughts, his vulnerabilities, his doubts. Thought you'd transfer by now, Connor called out as Tyrese passed. But something in Connor's voice had changed. Less confidence, more desperation. In chemistry class, Tyrese's lab partner didn't show up. Guess you're working alone, the teacher said awkwardly. As Tyrese gathered materials, someone slid onto the stool beside him. It was Darius, a basketball player who'd never spoken to him before. My mom says what they're doing to you is the same garbage she dealt with 20 years ago, Darius whispered. I got your back. At lunch, Tyrese headed to the library as instructed. He found not just Zoe waiting, but 7 other students and Ms. Winters. The superintendent is visiting tomorrow, Ms. Winters explained. Someone sent her all the documentation. We're going public with our stories, added Elena, a quiet sophomore. My brother faced the same thing from Connor's group last year. He switched schools. After school, Tyrese took a different route home, avoiding his usual path. Still, Connor, Ryan, and Jason found him behind the gym. "You've ruined everything," Connor snarled, shoving Tyrese against the wall. "My dad's reputation, our school." "Your dad ruined his own reputation," Tyrese replied, standing his ground. "And you ruined this school long before I got here." Ryan grabbed Tyrese's backpack, dumping its contents. "Let's see what else we can share online." What happened next stunned everyone. A voice shouted, "Leave him alone." Darius appeared, with 4 other students behind him. "This ends now," he declared, stepping between Tyrese and the bullies. "This isn't your business," Jason warned. "Actually, it is," said Amara, one of the girls who joined Darius. "We're all witnesses now." Principal Winters rounded the corner, his face thunderous. "All of you to my office." Now, in the principal's office, Winters paced angrily. "Fighting on school grounds. I should suspend every one of you." "We weren't fighting," Darius objected. "We were stopping a fight. Everyone gets the same punishment," Winters insisted. 2 weeks detention. Tyrese felt the injustice crush down on him. Even when others finally stood up, nothing changed. The system protected the powerful. That evening, Tyrese sat on his front porch, defeated. "I made everything worse," he told his grandfather. "Now other kids are being punished for helping me." Solomon sat beside him. "Did I ever tell you about February 1965? Grandpa, no offense, but I don't need a civil rights history lesson right now." "You do," Solomon insisted gently. "We've been marching for weeks. People were beaten. Some died. Many wanted to quit." He showed Tyrese an old scar on his hand. "I got this that month. Wanted to give up too. What changed? We realized something important. The most vicious backlash comes right before breakthrough. When oppressors fight hardest, it means they're most afraid." Tyrese looked up. "You think that's happening now?" "I know it is," Solomon nodded. "The question is, will you see it through?" That night, Tyrese received texts from students he'd never spoken to before, offering support. Ms. Winters called to say she'd filed a formal complaint against her own father with the school district. Meanwhile, the superintendent was reviewing years of buried incident reports. What no one knew was that Superintendent Garcia had history with Solomon Langston. They'd fought the same battles decades earlier. As Tyrese finally drifted to sleep, his phone lit up with one final message from an unknown number. "I can't be like my dad anymore. We need to talk. Connor." The superintendent's black sedan pulled into Westridge's parking lot exactly at 9 a.m. Dr. Garcia stepped out, her expression grave as news cameras caught her arrival. This was no longer just a school matter. It had become a community crisis. In the main office, Principal Winters attempted damage control. "We are addressing isolated incidents, Dr. Garcia. The situation has been blown out of proportion." The superintendent's response was cool. 47 documented incidents in 2 years doesn't sound isolated, Richard. While administrators met behind closed doors, Tyrese found a note in his locker. "Basketball courts. Lunch period. Come along. See." Grandpa Solomon's words echoed in Tyrese's mind as he approached the courts. Sometimes the hardest conversations are the most necessary ones. Connor sat alone on a bench, shoulders slumped. Without his friends flanking him, he looked smaller somehow. "My dad's probably losing his board seat," Connor said as Tyrese approached. "He threw a lamp last night. Called you and your grandfather all kinds of names." "I didn't start this to ruin your family," Tyrese replied. "I know." Connor stared at the ground. "My dad's been like this my whole life. Nothing's ever good enough. When I got second place in that math competition," he didn't finish the sentence. Tyrese sat on the opposite end of the bench. "My journal entry that everyone laughed at, about feeling like I'm never black enough for some people and too black for others, that's real. I never thought about having to think about that stuff," Connor admitted. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the main building. Students poured outside as Dr. Garcia addressed the crowd. "Effective immediately, Principal Winters is taking administrative leave," she announced. Ms. Elena Winters will serve as interim principal. We're implementing a district intervention team to rebuild school culture. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. That afternoon, Tyrese's phone buzzed constantly with supportive messages. Ms. Winters, now interim Principal Winters, called a special assembly for the next day. At home, Tyrese found his grandfather talking with a familiar face, Dr. Garcia herself. Your grandfather and I marched together in Mississippi, she explained to Tyrese's surprise. When I saw his name in those complaints, I knew I needed to look closer. You knew each other? Tyrese asked, astonished. Solomon smiled. Some networks run deeper than others, grandson. The next morning, Tyrese entered a transformed school. Posters lined the halls announcing new anti-bullying protocols. In the assembly, interim Principal Winters didn't hide from the truth. We failed you, she said simply. That changes today. Students who had faced bullying were invited to participate in creating new school policies. Former silent bystanders stepped forward to help. Even Ryan and Jason approached the committee, awkwardly offering to participate. After the assembly, Zoe caught up with Tyrese. They want you to lead the student task force, she said excitedly. Tyrese hesitated. I'm not sure I'm the right person. That's exactly why you are, came a voice behind them. It was Connor. I want to help too. I need to fix what I helped break. That evening, Tyrese wrote in his new journal, Grandpa Solomon had replaced the stolen one. Day 45 at Westridge. Everything has changed, including me. Grandpa says the measure of a community isn't whether it has problems, but how it faces them. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. As he closed the journal, Tyrese realized the story wasn't ending. In many ways, it was just beginning. The school board meeting room was standing room only. Parents, teachers, and students packed every corner. At the front table sat the board members, minus James Reynolds, who had resigned the previous week. Tyrese approached the microphone, his prepared speech in hand. 2 months ago, he'd stood in this same spot feeling alone. Tonight, students from all grades lined up behind him in silent support. Westridge failed its students. Tyrese began, his voice clear and steady. Not just me. Not just minorities. It failed everyone by teaching that power matters more than truth. From the audience, Grandpa Solomon nodded encouragingly. But failures create opportunity, Tyrese continued. Our school now has a chance to become something better than it was. He outlined a new student-led initiatives, peer mediation, anonymous reporting systems, curriculum additions addressing diversity and conflict resolution. When Tyrese finished, Connor unexpectedly approached the microphone. My father taught me that strength means dominating others, Connor said, his voice shaking. I was wrong to believe him. Real strength is what Tyrese showed, standing up for truth, even when it's difficult. After the meeting, Dr. Garcia pulled Tyrese aside. The district is implementing your recommendations in all 15 schools, she explained. You've started something important. Outside the building, Tyrese found Ryan waiting by the steps. My little brother Jamie keeps asking when you'll visit, Ryan said awkwardly. He thinks you're some kind of superhero. Tyrese laughed. I'm definitely not that. You kind of are, Ryan insisted. To the kids who were afraid to speak up before. At school the next day, interim Principal Winters unveiled the new student council structure with representatives from every grade and background. Tyrese was elected 7th grade representative by overwhelming majority. During lunch, Tyrese found himself at a table that would have been unimaginable months earlier. Zoe with her camera, Darius discussing basketball, Elena sharing college brochures, and even Connor, still finding his place in this new dynamic. Ms. Winters asked if I'd help tutor the 6th graders in math, Tyrese told them. You should do it, Connor said. You explain things better than most teachers. After school, Tyrese and his grandfather met with a reporter from the local newspaper. What would you tell other students facing similar situations? The reporter asked. Solomon watched proudly as his grandson considered the question. Document everything, Tyrese began. Find allies. Know your rights. And remember that systems don't change themselves. People change them. That evening, Tyrese received an unexpected email from Jason's mother. My son is learning difficult lessons about character. Your dignity through this situation is teaching him more than my words ever could. As Tyrese prepared for bed, his grandfather knocked on his door, holding an old, worn book. I've been saving this, Solomon said, handing it to Tyrese. My journal from 1963. Different time, some very similar battles. Tyrese opened it carefully, seeing his grandfather's youthful handwriting describing familiar struggles. Why show me this now? Tyrese asked. Because tomorrow you start tutoring younger students, Solomon replied. You're not just teaching math. You're showing them what leadership looks like. As Tyrese drifted to sleep, he realized something had fundamentally shifted. The bullies hadn't just lost their power over him. They lost their power over themselves, freed from patterns that had trapped them too. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for tonight, in the quiet of his room, Tyrese knew he had helped bend the long arc of his school's history a little more toward justice. 1 year later, Tyrese Langston stood at the podium in the Westridge Auditorium. Now in 8th grade, he addressed the incoming 6th grade class during orientation. When I came to this school, things were different, he began. But that's the thing about communities. They can change when enough people decide they should. From the front row, Grandpa Solomon beamed with pride. Beside him sat Dr. Garcia and Principal Winters. She dropped the interim title 6 months ago, after implementing the most successful cultural turnaround the district had seen in decades. The school Tyrese described to the new students was almost unrecognizable from the one he'd entered. The student council now reflected the diversity of the student body. The peer mediation program had reduced disciplinary incidents by 60%. The math tutoring program Tyrese had started served over 50 students weekly. After the orientation, Tyrese checked his phone to find a text from Connor. Dad's therapy is actually helping. He asked if you'd be willing to meet sometime. No pressure. Tyrese smiled slightly. James Reynolds' journey toward understanding had been slow and reluctant, but genuine. The text reminded Tyrese how far they'd all come. In the hallway, Tyrese passed a glass display case that hadn't existed a year ago. Inside were photographs documenting Westridge's transformation, alongside historical civil rights images, including one of a young Solomon Langston marching in Selma. The plaque read, "Change is always possible. That new kid looks exactly like you did," Zoe said, catching up to Tyrese and pointing toward a nervous-looking 6th grader clutching his schedule. Tyrese approached the boy. Need help finding your class? The relief on the boy's face was immediate. I have Ms. Rodriguez for math, but I don't know where room 136 is. That's where I'm heading. I'm a teaching assistant there this year, Tyrese explained, guiding him down the hallway. At the classroom door, Tyrese spotted Ryan helping his little brother Jamie get organized. Jamie still talks about the math tricks you taught him, Ryan said. He was struggling before. Sometimes we all need someone to show us a different approach, Tyrese replied. That afternoon, Tyrese met with the expanded student council. Their agenda included planning for the upcoming district-wide student leadership conference, an event inspired by Westridge's transformation. After school, Tyrese walked home with his grandfather, describing the day's events. I received a letter today, Solomon said as they turned onto their street, from a teacher in Portland who read about what happened here. Her school is facing similar problems. What did you tell her? Tyrese asked. I told her about my grandson, Solomon replied simply. About how change starts with one person refusing to accept what is wrong. At home, Tyrese found an envelope addressed to him, an invitation to speak at a national education conference about student-led school reform. That evening, Tyrese opened his journal, volume 3 now, and wrote, Sometimes I still think about that day behind the playground. If Connor and his friends hadn't cornered me, if I'd stayed quiet, if Zoe hadn't been recording, so many ifs. But Grandpa Solomon says history doesn't move in straight lines. It circles back, giving us chances to make different choices. Last week, I saw a 7th grader step between 2 arguing 6th graders. I heard her say, That's not how we do things here anymore. Maybe that's the real victory, not just changing rules, but changing what people believe is possible. As he closed his journal, Tyrese looked at the framed photograph on his desk, himself standing with Grandpa Solomon at the school board meeting a year ago. Different generations, same fight, same strength. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There was still work to do. But tonight, Tyrese Langston slept peacefully, knowing that sometimes the boy cornered by bullies behind the playground isn't just a victim in someone else's story. Sometimes he becomes the author of a whole new one. Was Connor's apology enough, or do you think it came too late? Share what you think below. If you're still listening now, this channel must be doing something right, so why not hit that subscribe button? Don't stop here. Click the next story and dive in.